Alright, let me just run through a couple terrain tools that you may not even know exist, but they're super powerful. So the first one is if, let's say I wanted to completely flatten this entire terrain down to zero. What I would be using is this set height tool. So just to show you how it works real quick, so I can use the set height value right here. So let's say for example I set it to 0 and then I did the set height. I would basically flatten my terrain to that value. So if I make my wheel as big as I want, I can basically flatten large chunks of terrain essentially to zero value really quickly. Really wish I knew this when I first started because this would have saved me tons of time. You can also do things like set the height to a higher value. Now, high values don't always work, so I'd be like 50, then obviously you'll be at 50. You know, you can do 100, you'll be at 100. Sometimes it doesn't give you the results that you would think. Like if I did, 50, and then, you'd say 100, and then what, 150, see how 150 is a little shorter than that. So you might run into weird issues like that. Just be mindful. The max height of this terrain looks like before it starts breaking apart is about there. So I don't know if that has anything to do with it. But that is a super powerful tool. Then the terrain height picker, all it does is if you click this icon, you'll see this red circle. If you click at a terrain level, you'll get a height number right here in this field, and then basically you can continue to use your set height and basically match everything to that exact height. And then the softness setting does not affect the terrain set height, whereas it does affect the lift terrain. So softness all the way down and then softness all the way up would give you that effect. And obviously grab terrain does work on the same principles with the softness. So grab terrain on a 0 versus grab terrain on a max softness. But let me show you how to poke a hole in the terrain. So you want to drive a tunnel through a piece of your terrain and you want to poke a hole in it. Well, you can actually create a hole in the terrain. And the way to do it is all you got to do is go to my clear terrain. What you're going to do is you're going to see this red circle. So you're just going to click once. It's not going to do anything until you hit the back, undo and then redo. So if I undo, redo, now you can see my hole. In order to do it to this side, I'd have to do the same thing really. So poke a hole, undo, redo, there's my hole. Obviously the normals would be showing, so you'd have to, drive like a prop through it, like a big tunnel or something, and then you can drive through it. But just to show it, that's how you can poke a hole in the terrain. And then if you want to restore it, it's basically the same thing. You can make it bigger, big as you need it. Click. I don't think you have to do the undo, redo in this case. Click. Now if I did undo and redo, you're probably getting some different painting on there, in which case you just simply have to, repaint, which is super easy. So that explains that. Finally, this last one I want to cover is the align with mesh tool. So if you have like a building or something that's over your terrain, it's not quite, you have one option. You can either, raise the terrain manually, lower it and all that good stuff and try and get it to match up to the bottom, or you can just use the align with mesh up. Now, a couple caveats. Sometimes it's a little weird, like see how it only aligns to the vertices in the mesh. So if you hit it like that, you'll kind of get it. If it's something bigger, it seems to also maybe work better, but just it's really powerful, but at the same time it has some weird caveats. So also if I scale up an item, an object, and I do the same thing, it still works. Seems to still work. I did rebuild collisions, but at the same time it still seems to work all the way to the edges. So the final thing is the align with mesh down. So if I have terrain that's already over the object, I can align with mesh down, but it only gets it down to the top, it looks like, I think. Let me see here. I don't know if oh, maybe it does go to the bottom. Okay, so it would actually maybe go to the bottom of the mesh, but it only impacts like that area, so it's kind of, not necessarily the way you might want it to look, but you could always smooth it out, and then you can always do another line with mesh up. But see, you kind of get some artifacts sometimes, but the best I can tell, this subtract mesh does the same thing as the align with mesh down. I don't really see how it works differently, but I'm getting like the same effect, so I don't know. I don't ever use that, but hey, it's there. Just something cool to know that these tools exist, so that way if you find a use for them, hey, they're there.